If you want to know the key ingredients, the secret sauce to staff meetings for a cash-based healthcare practice, then listen up, because I'm going to tell you exactly what we cover in every one of my weekly staff meetings, and more importantly, how I get my team to buy in to the things I'm asking them to do and to change. This is a game changer. These concepts and these strategies of getting buy-in from your staff and getting them on board with your mission in your practice is absolutely make or break for the long-term success of your business. Welcome to today's episode. My name is Jarod Carter. I'm a physical therapist, a cash-based practice owner, and the creator of the Private Pay Profit Formula. I help healthcare providers just like you to create your own cash-based, out-of-network or concierge practice so you can provide a level of care you are ultimately proud of, cut ties with greedy insurance companies, and reclaim your profits in your future. So if you're new here, consider subscribing, because I do free trainings like this all the time, and they always have a free resource that you can download designed to get you results faster. And this episode's free resource is my cash-based practice staff meeting template. It's a checklist that you can insert into your practice right away to start getting better results, because you're focusing on the right things and you're focusing your staff on the right things. And you can download that at drjarodcarter.com/episode 28. Okay, let's dig in. Now, before I get into all the different bullet points and things that we cover in each meeting, I want to talk first about how I get my staff to really get on board with the things that we're looking at and understanding why these KPIs and these different things that we're looking at every single week, week after week, and the things I'm asking them to change and do, that they really buy into it. And what I typically do, and this is not something I repeat every week by any means, but it's something that probably comes up at least quarterly. I just remind them, like, hey, why are we here? Why did we get into healthcare in the first place? In our case, physical therapy. And the answer across the board, especially for the clinicians, is we're here to help people, right? Yeah, I mean, people want to make a good living, that kind of thing, of course, is important. But ultimately, what drove most clinicians into healthcare is that they have an inherent drive to help people, to serve people. And so when I get them to repeat that and recognize that, and then I repeat my spiel of, look, when we have somebody who, let's say they haven't decided to come in, but we have them on the phone, or we have them in front of us in an in-person consultation, and you decide to not make sure that you say the things that I've asked you to say, that you follow the scripts, that you structure and guide that conversation in the way that I've trained you, and they say no, because the emotional buttons were not pushed in the way that they should have been in order to get them to say yes to what they need, right? And this is all, of course, coming from the foundation of knowing that what we offer is what they need for that particular issue. Of course, if somebody's dealing with something that we need to refer out, or we're not the best answer or solution to that, then we refer them out. I would never ask my staff, and you shouldn't either, to suggest something that someone doesn't really need or wouldn't benefit from, right? So with that as the foundation, my staff and I all agree. It's like, look, if we're going to give top-level healthcare and be a great solution for what this person is dealing with, then we are doing them a disservice by not getting them to say yes to getting our top-level healthcare and getting better as quickly as possible and back to the things that are important to them in their life. It is a disservice to that person. And ultimately, our mission, the thing that brought us into healthcare in the first place, we are not living that out. We're not fulfilling our mission whenever we let someone slip through the cracks because we didn't feel comfortable about asking about goals or limitations, or we didn't make it a priority to follow certain scripts and do and say the things that I, as an expert in this, have trained them to do. And so that's generally, you can word that in however you want to with your staff, but you get them to admit, I'm in this to help people. I always have been. And if I follow this structure and these trainings, and this is how I get people to not only say yes to in the first place, but continue to come back until they've reached 100% of their goals, then I'm doing them a disservice, and I'm not fulfilling my mission as a healthcare provider and why I'm in this career in the first place. That is how I have been able to get the best buy-in from my staff, especially clinicians, when we go through our weekly meetings and look at all these different KPIs, where a lot of clinicians and people, they kind of get annoyed by it, or their eyes glaze over. It's not really held as that important. But I remember them. This is why it's important. And I want you to take that and use it as well, because if you can go through all the KPIs you want, but if you don't have buy-in for the people who are really influencing those KPIs, then your results are going to be lackluster. So really getting that buy-in is key. All right, so in each of our staff meetings, first we have general discussion items. Throughout the week, I might text my admin, or if we're on a call or whatever, I'll let her know, hey, let's talk about this, let's talk about that. She has things that come up she wants to discuss. Sometimes the clinicians have things they want to discuss. So just general topics, it can be anything and everything. Sometimes I want to do a little mini training on something that I feel is important. Sometimes we want to discuss certain clinical approaches or whatever the case may be, but we have that at the beginning. And then for each clinician, we go through a series of things. First is appointments booked for the past week. All right, so we meet on Friday mornings, basically from the last Friday to the day before Thursday. We look at that kind of week and we say, all right, how many bookings did you have out of how many were available on your schedule? And from there, we get a percentage of booked for that last week. And we're generally, and of course we want 100% booked, but with cancellations and sometimes different parts of the year are slower, our kind of benchmark is to always really, really push and strive for at least 80% booked or better. Next, we have for that clinician, all of the cancellations that they had, each patient. And then with each patient, my admin will say if they've been rebooked or if they haven't been rebooked, if they're a discharge, if they, whatever, just some detail about each situation. And a lot at that time, where often it's the admin asking the clinician, hey, I'm going to follow up at this time unless you think that something's off, or do you want to follow up? Or we work out a plan for each person that canceled that week that isn't already rebooked, and the situation is fine because they're rebooked and we're good to go. From those cancellations, our next little item is cancellation rate. We want to keep that at less than 10%. Next, we have a row for new patients. And this is good if we want to talk clinically about any new cases that we have coming to the door, but also, as I explained in the last episode, and if you want to learn more about the general KPIs, the overall specific KPIs that we use in my practice and others, you can go check out episode 27. But knowing the number of new patients that we had in that last week over week will help to give me a little bit of a prediction of how busy or not busy we'll be in the next 4 to 6 weeks beyond that point. Because I know that given the amount of slots, appointment slots that each clinician has in order to be fully booked, and our average of about 5 visits per plan of care, I know how many new patients each of them need to stay relatively booked. Of course, that can change. People can get better faster than 5 visits, and sometimes they take much longer, so it can flux. But on average, over the long term, I know for each clinician how many new patients they need each week to stay relatively booked for the weeks ahead. Then we have a section for discovery sessions. If we did any in-person free consultations, then we have those listed and we talk about those and how those went. Then our next row is drop-offs. So we talk about anyone that was scheduled within the last week that does not have an appointment scheduled beyond that point. Sometimes there's a crossover with the cancellation row, but we talk about drop-offs and whether we need to follow up with them right away, what the plan is. We set a plan for each patient, and this is absolutely key. I mean, you can't have 100%, everyone stays on schedule till 100% discharge goals reached. That's never going to happen. But by having this drop-off row and every patient listed there, and we discuss it every week, what's the follow-up? What can we do to get them back on schedule? That has been an absolute game changer. And if you only take one thing from this video, please make sure you're on a weekly basis when you meet. And I would say if you're not already meeting weekly as a team, you should be. But that is something that you need to look at and say, what is the plan for each of these people? Are they actually needing to be discharged? Do we need to send the discharge note to the referring provider? Whatever the case may be. But follow up. Get them back on schedule. Don't let them slip through the cracks. If you do this, you will need drastically fewer new patients on an ongoing basis to keep your schedule full, which is an absolute game changer. So please take this one thing at least and implement it in your staff meetings. Then we have a section for discharges, of known discharges. It's time to get that note off to the referring provider if there is one. It's time to send that handwritten thank you card to the patient themselves. and it's time to click go on our discharge campaign so we get reminders for the clinician to follow up with them 30 days later with a phone call to check in. Or if, depending on the factors, if maybe the symptoms might return sooner than that, we set up the discharge follow-up sequence so we make sure we get them back in if they have any return of symptoms or any need for our services. And then finally, last thing is review request. Depending on the amount of patients that each person sees, there's an expected number of review requests. Usually for most of my clinicians, it's 1 request per week. And then those are on the phone, the admins, they also are expected to, as they're rescheduling or talking to people who might be raving about their experience so far, it's like, hey, strike when the iron's hot. Say, hey, would you mind telling your story on our Google review page that brings us a lot of our patients? I'll send you the link right now. So everyone is expected to request at least 1 review per week, and then we have reviews acquired or reviews posted, and we really want to try to make sure that we get at least 50% of the people that say, yes, I'll do it, to actually do it. And we, of course, have a review request follow-up system to make that happen. Some of that is automated. So that, in a nutshell, is what we cover in our weekly meetings and why it's important, where it tells us that we might need some remediation. If we're having a high no-show rate to the first visit, we got to go back to those call recordings on the initial phone calls and say, why did that person not show up? Why didn't they have enough buy-in? Oh, we forgot to do this, or we forgot that part of the script. If our drop-off rate is higher than it should be, higher than 10% at a max, then let's talk to the clinician and remind them about what they need to be saying at the beginning, during treatment, especially at the end when we're booking that next session. Are we dangling the carrot about what's to come? What new techniques we might be trying next time if they're ready? What changes we're going to make in their home program in order to get them to 100% of their goals, because what they're doing right now is not going to be adequate to getting them all the way there. That has to change. Are we painting that picture throughout the plan of care to make sure that they keep showing up because they're expecting more and more and more, and we keep them focused on getting to 100% of their goals, not just 80%. Those are the kinds of things that we talk about all the time, and these KPIs, these things we look at each week, are telling us when I need to jump in and say, hey, is this or that being done? Why are we seeing these numbers below what they should be? So there you have it. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions about this or any comments on this, or if you have anyone that you think would benefit from this, please comment below, tag them, share this with them. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode.